Yeah, it's working.
Well, good job. Would you volunteer Augsburg?
That's
Not yet.
great job.
I can if you want me to. Pan-Afrikan Conference. We are going to need every bit of strength to make sure that we get out of this conference what we need to take back to our campuses, what we need to put on our hearts and our minds and our souls. So, with that said, I would like all of us to stand.
Our heritage is spiritually oriented being.
I am an intelligent, capable person.
I am an intelligent, capable person.
I recognize the common bond of all African people in the diaspora.
I recognize the common bond of all African people in the diaspora.
I am because we are.
I am because we are.
We are African.
We are African.
We claim our history as a powerful people of God.
We claim our history as a powerful people of God.
We are able to do anything and everything as long as we do it together.
We are able to do anything and everything as long as we are together.
We recognize the collective necessity of all African people wherever they may be.
We recognize the necessities of all African people wherever they may be.
We are African.
We are African.
We are not a race.
We are not a race.
Yet, as united all African,
Yet, as united all African,
we respond
we respond
academically,
positively,
progressively,
and
effectively to
effectively
to imperialism, colonialism, racism,
racism,
and oppression.
and oppression.
We are Pan-African.
We are Pan-African.
Here in our libation, we want to always call upon the spirits and energies and visions, hopes, dreams, efforts, and aspirations of all those who have gone on before us. There is most certainly no ability for any of us to be here unless someone paved the way before you. You would not be able to even be in this auditorium today collected as one without those who have enabled you to do so. And many of those, most of those, are nameless. And so what we want to do is to recognize in our libation this morning, how many of you understand what a libation is for? A libation basically is for our recognition. It's a process and a ritual for our recognition that we need all of what's happened before us, all around us and all in us in order to make this, whatever we do, happen. So we have a libation. We always recognize God the Creator. We always recognize the focus and source of all life. And when we do so, we all respond with the word ashe, which means be with us. And so when we call on God to be with us, we say ashe, God be with us.
Ashe.
And we also call on all of the visions and spirits and dreams and hopes of all of our forebears. And so we invoke and invite them into our conference. And we say,
Ashe.
we recognize that our ancestors suffered. They went through oppression. They went through struggles. And they faced a trial that most of us have no comprehension of. And we recognize their suffering, and we say,
Ashe.
we also recognize their overcoming. We also respond to the fact that they did overcome, and their overcoming allows us to be here. And so we recognize their overcoming with the word
Ashe.
We also want to recognize those of us who are here. And we say, among ourselves, we are all here collected as one. And so we say,
Ashe.
we want to recognize our children. Those of you who have children, the children that are a part of our extended community, and the children yet to be born. And so we recognize them.
Ashe.
We also want to recognize some specific names. We recognize the name of Kwame Nkrumah.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Henry Sylvester Williams.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Sojourner Truth.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Patrice Lumumba.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Jomo Kenyatta.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Frederick Douglass.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Malcolm X.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Marcus Garvey.
Ashe.
We recognize the name of Martin Luther King Jr.
Ashe.
And we want to recognize specifically today, as we referred to last year, the passing of our sister who was a part of this and still with us, Emanita Gay Hall.
Ashe.
And we come together as one with all of that power and with all that spirit. What I want to share with you is a couple of scriptural verses, some verses that speak to the issue of us. In Genesis, in the Torah, the word says God created male and female, he created them. It simply reminds us that as males and females, no matter what your complexion, no matter what your size, no matter what your shape, no matter what physical configuration you're made of, you're made in the image of God. Do you know that? Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay. In the Nevi'im, and one of the prophets spoke, have we all Quran, chapter 23, surely this is your brotherhood, is a single brotherhood, and I am your Lord, so keep your duty to me. But they, mankind, split themselves up into sects, and each party rejoicing in its own tendency. This thing that Mahmoud talked about yesterday, this thing called race, we need to throw that. Pan-Africanism began when the first African slave picked up a handful of dirt and put it in his mouth as he became taken to the ship. That's the energy that we want to draw upon. The reality of why we're here today is not to get our groove on or to get jiggy with us. The reality of why we're here today and why we go through this process is so that we can learn how we are as one. So we can understand the forces that separate us. So we can understand the forces that continue to try to keep us separate. Those of you who are from the continent understand that you came with certain perspectives and perceptions about what you would get when you were here, about who African American people were. African American people, you had your own preconceptions about who African people were. But the fact of the matter is, you're all one. We're all one. And what we want to do is to try to recognize that and to try to look at that and to try to find out why we can't do these same things that we have here on our own campuses to try to make them happen. It's important for us to be of one mind and one spirit. And in order to do that, you have to make that effort. It just doesn't happen by osmosis. And it's certainly not going to happen just because you can dance to the same song together. But the fact that we have to live with is we need to understand and know. Because without knowledge, without information, we have no ability to overcome the scenarios that we live in. I say these words because our libation symbolizes the efforts of those who look forward. Now, those names that I called out are just a few smattering of names that you may not even be familiar with. Hopefully, by the end of this conference, you will get familiar with some of those names and understand who W.E.B. Du Bois was, and understand who Martin Luther was, understand what their efforts were, understand the sacrifices they made, understand that even between the differences between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, even between the differences between Julius Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah, that there was something, there was a force that was present with them that allowed them to sit down and discuss their differences, talk about how they can help to, the word they used back then was ameliorate, which means to resolve the conflict of issues that they were faced with. And today, you still have those same issues that are more complex. I want to exhort you to be as one, to come on one accord, to look towards all this information that you can get, seriousness of mind, seriousness of spirit, and the effort it takes to try to make it do something for it, create something for it, from the campuses that you're on to your own life, your own lifestyle. So when you see someone who has experienced something different, you want to reach out to that, be comfortable, find out what that is, because it's probably a part of you and something that you need to know. We'll talk about things throughout the conference, like this erroneous concept of race and the craziness of racism that it created. We'll talk about colonialism and how it has damaged greatly many countries across the continent of Africa. We'll talk about the diaspora and how African people ended up in Brazil in the hundreds of, in the tens of millions. In fact, there are more Africans in Brazil than there are in most any other place in the diaspora. We'll talk about how the economic structure of this global economy is going to be important for us to know. And you're going to want to think about how that's going to affect you, your major, whether you're a business major, a computer science major, social worker, or whether you want to start your own business. The idea is that you want to get something out of this that you can begin to apply to yourself. So I want you to open your mind and create room for something you don't know. Create room for someone else that you don't know. Someone in this conference. One of my challenges is to you is to get to know somebody who doesn't live in the same country that you do, who's not from the same conference, who's not from the same school. Reach out to someone else. Take advantage of this opportunity to dialogue and share. Before you leave this place, you should exchange numbers. Not for social reasons per se, but for reasons of being able to collect together and to share what each one of you have to know. That's what this conference is all about. That's what the spirit of realization poured into this conference stands for. That's what we put together, so that you can get something out of this that you otherwise would never get on your campus. On most campuses, African students are in the international student office, and African American students are in the multicultural student office, and they're separated. Pan-Africanism is something that's, first of all, older than this in fact, it's a neo-oppressive course called multiculturalism. So you'll get to know that. Again, that's what this conference is about. What you want to really get into is something else and someone else. Take an opportunity to sit with other people, talk with other people. I've been a part of this conference this is my 19th year, since I was a senior in high school. And each year, I get to know someone else from someplace else. And what that does is increase me. And you'll be increased by doing the same thing. Get to know somebody from a different campus, from a different culture, from a different country. What we want to understand is that the systems that we work in and operate in, the educational systems, are designed to keep you mute, to deafen the ear to the truth. And what we want to try to do here is to help you overcome that. Give you some information that will start tickling in your soul and start burning on your ears so you want more. It's important for you to be able to take some of your own seat, because it does take it. You're not going to get it just by sitting there. Most of you go to classes, you take notes. Most of you go to classes, you can buy almost $200-300 worth of books. I know I ain't lying. I see the cost. But you're here with just open up, take advantage of this full conference, listen to all the speakers, go to the workshops, and take the effort, because those people who took efforts before you gave their life for it. And the least we can do is take advantage of the outcome of those efforts. So we're here as one. That's what Pan-Africanism is all about. Pan-Africanism is not anti-anything except hatred, oppression, racism, imperialism, colonialism, and all those things that destroy the human soul and the human body. And so we want you to be clear about that. What I really want you to be clear about is when you go back to your campuses, that you can tell your fellow students, you can tell your instructors and staff people on your campus that you went to a conference and this is what you learned. I learned what Pan-Africanism is about. Pan-Africanism is about all African people who have been dispersed through the forces of the slave system, who've been dispersed and depleted through the forces of colonialism, who've been beat down through the forces of oppressive, racist mentality. And I learned that Pan-Africanism is a result of that. It's a response to that. And at the same time, I learned how that can help me and us here on this campus. Because Pan-Africanism in its truest entity will allow you to take something back to your campuses that nobody can argue with. No president, no faculty advisor, no administrator can argue with what the outcome of Pan-Africanism will do for you on your campus. Because it's going to be something, as we said, it's going to be something positive. It's going to be something corrective. It's going to be something definite to changing your situation. Somebody mentioned last night that you have money that you pay in the student fee every term. And the fact of the matter is, many of you don't take advantage of that. It's important to do that because that's your money. In fact, that money should pay when you come here to the conference. So you don't have to pay anything because you've already paid it. But when you have to pay money to come here to the conference, after you already paid money to the school, you pay it twice. And that's just a little tidbit. That's just a little tidbit of the reality that we want to try to address so that you can go back to your campus with a sense of strength. My ultimate encouragement is don't close your mind to anything. There are going to be people here who say things that you may not understand. They may say things that you may disagree with. That's fine too. The opportunity to dialogue because of disagreement is only going to produce a closer reality for us to get to the truth. Again, this is the Pan-African Conference. This is not the African American Conference. This is not the African Conference. This is not the American Conference. This is the Pan-African Conference. And it's about addressing the situation of African people. And the outcome of that is it enhances, it stabilizes, and it actually builds up humanity itself. So when you go through the workshop, you listen to the speakers, when you talk and meet with other students from other campuses, from other countries, from other cultures, take an opportunity to open yourself up to receive what they have to say, what they have to offer. Anybody here from any in this room from Nigeria? Anybody in this room from Tanzania? Anybody in this room from Ethiopia? From Ghana? From Rome? Anybody in this room from Senegal? Anybody in this room from Detroit?
You know, close enough.
Anybody in this room from New York? From Los Angeles? From Atlanta? From Minneapolis? From Houston? From Chicago? In the house. All of that is Pan-African, y'all. And the reality is you probably speak a different language. And there's truly a different language spoken in New York than is spoken in Los Angeles. Just like there's a different language that's spoken between the Amharic and Oromo. There's a different language between the Yoruba and the Igbo. between Fulani and Ashanti, between the God and the tree. There's different languages spoken. Take advantage to get to know people, to learn how to at least greet them in their own language. Another child. Listen to what people say. So when you say Habarigani, you know how to respond to it. Who knows how to respond to Habarigani? Who understands, in fact, who understands the meaning of the word Harambe? It's a legacy that our mother and mentor in that meeting at Augsburg left us. Harambe means let us all pull together. It's about unity. It's about when you pull together, you form an unbroken circle, a chain, a link. And that link is dependent upon the strength of each individual. And the strength of each individual responds to that link. The stronger the link, the stronger the individual. The stronger the individual, the stronger the link. We build each other up. And that's what it's all about. If you don't get to know somebody from another country, from another culture, from another campus, then you wasted your opportunity. If you don't understand the definition of Pan-African to be able to explain to somebody, then you're not getting out of this conference what you need to get out of this conference. If you're not getting tools based upon the theme of this conference, economic tools, equipment that you can use for yourself on your campuses and use in your individual life, then you're not getting out of this conference what you should get out of it. And you will get that out of it. Opening up. Embracing the spirit and vision of those who paved the way before you. Looking forward to the future of your own children, and our own children. And being able to see your role in this continuum. Because it will come back around. In fact, I'm sure our speakers will speak to the fact that it's coming back around. There's an article in a recent issue of Relaxed Higher Education talking about affirmative action. We need to understand how that's going to affect you, how that's going to affect your ability to even get into the college, let alone receive financial aid. Now, I'm not just talking about grants, I'm talking about loans. They want to get you a loan because there's certain qualifications. We'll have speakers that'll speak to that. We'll have speakers that'll speak to how you can manage your own money. Someone asked a question last night to Dr. Bryant about credit card debt. And I'm not even going to ask you, but I bet the majority of you have a credit card. As students, not with a full-time job. And I'm talking about credit card debt over and above student loans. That you got to pay that. And it's interesting because part of all of that is a part of this whole the same force that created the diaspora, that separated African people, that depopulated much of West Africa. Do you know that much of West Africa is depopulated because of the result of the slave trade? And some of the estimates range between 40 up to 100 million African people died just in the process of being captured, the process of being sold. The minimum figure is around 35 million over the course of 300 years. 35 million. And then everybody asks the question, well, what's wrong with these African countries? How come they're not competing in the global market? Well, when the people have been taken out of those countries and forces of European colonial powers have been put in place, and when those forces left, there was nothing left. The infrastructure was wiped out, and the human resource was demoralized and debilitated. Those are some of the things that you're going to hear speakers say at this time. And what you want to do is to be able to say, how does that relate to me, who was born and raised in St. Paul? How does that relate to me, who made me from Tanzania, but I'm going to school in this country? How does that relate to me? Because I'm South African and going to school in Manhattan. How does that relate to me? And is there a response that I have to make? All of this is what this conference is about. And what I hope to do in this moment is that's one of the main emphases of what we're doing here. So if you have questions, ask. If you talk to one another, you get to know that you probably have more in common in terms of thought than you can accept, particularly without that information. And finally, when we get to the Brown Act, when we get to the point where we're closing the conference, we're recognizing people, we're awarding speakers for their participation and their service, and we're celebrating in our talents. And then we get to the point where we truly can celebrate in a party. You want to be in a position on the planet without a cultural ethos, consciously, a cultural ethos, as a collective group. And one of our students, who is from Zimbabwe, made this interesting comment last week. And he said to a group of us, how come African American history only began 350 years ago? Because he was observing Black History Month programs, and they all started in the past 300 years. And even in the, and that's why I say the context of multiculturalism is kind of a neo-oppressive force, because it dims the mind to the history. Now, the difference is, in a multicultural context, Asians can point to Laos, or Thai, or Vietnam, or Korea, or China, and Japan. They can identify with a language, and a culture, and a land. Hispanics can identify with Nicaragua, or Peru, or Puerto Rico, or Spain. Native Americans can identify with Ojibwe, Shawnee, Cherokee, with a language, and a land, and a culture. African Americans can't do that consciously.
That's right.
Because most of us don't know if we were Gar, Tree, or Fulani, or Europe, or Igbo, or Ethan, or Shawnee. We don't know that. We don't know that language, and that culture, and the religious heritage that went along with that. And so part of what Pan-Africanism does for African Americans is connect you. In fact, one of the benefits that's going to come from something that President Rawlings from Ghana recently proposed in allowing African
Dr. Brockett received a PhD from Rutgers University, Graduate School of Criminal Justice, where she presented her dissertation topic entitled Black versus White, Approval of Police Aggression, a functional question of race, class, and religion. Dr. Brockett is also a graduate of Boston College Law School, where she received her Juris Doctorate. Upon receiving her Juris Doctorate, she served as judicial clerkship in the Criminal Court Division of the New Jersey Superior Court under Honorable Harry Hazelwood King. She is one of only 5 Black women in the country with both a PhD in criminal justice and a Juris Doctorate. Upon completion of her judicial clerkship with the Criminal Court Division of the Superior Courts of New Jersey, she worked as a legal associate and in corporate counsel in both the private and public sector. Dr. Brockett also served as a legal consultant and on-the-air commentator for CBS News Radio 88 out of New York City and WHYY 91.6 National Public Radio in Philadelphia. Dr. Brockett is the 1993, 95, and 96 recipient of the Award for Outstanding Contributions in Drug Law Enforcement from the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as the DEA. Dr. Brockett has developed 2 theories which have been published. First, the Coca-Cola bottle theory, which was published in 1995 in a chapter entitled The Role of the JV in Criminal Justice Education. In the book Contemporary History of Criminal Justice, Shaping Tomorrow's System, published by McGraw-Hill, which takes a look at the role of Supreme Court in the 20th century and presents decision-making outcomes for the 21st century. This August of 1999, in a book entitled A System in Black and White, Crisis in Criminal Justice, published by Greenwood Press, Dr. Brockett introduced her second theory, entitled Conceptual Incarceration, which takes a look at the state of African Americans and declares them enslaved upon incarceration. It takes a look. Her book chapter, which illustrates this theory, is entitled Conceptual Incarceration, Policing the African American Community, the Dismantling of the 13th Amendment, edited by Dr. Dolores Jones Brown of John Jay University and Michael Markowitz of Whiteman University. Dr. Brockett presently has one book under contract entitled Invisible Princesses, which takes a look at issues concerning the post-civil rights era African American female from the silent black, middle, and upper class. The second book, which is presently in contract negotiation, involves the topic being discussed today and is presently entitled The Coca-Cola Bottle Theory, the War Between the 20th Century Civil Liberties and the 21st Century Governmental Intrusion. Finally, Dr. Brockett is currently working on a reader for minorities in crime and is also working on a book on racial reconciliation. Dr. Brockett is a member of the American Society of Criminologists, the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences, the National Black Criminologists and Law and Society. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Romona Brockett.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here today. I was told two things before I started. One, they asked me if I wanted to take my glasses off. This is a New York thing, y'all. You understand? I'm from Brooklyn. So the glasses are staying on. It's just for, the glasses and God together that are keeping me. Secondly, I heard that I'm being told that there are people from Montana to, I guess, New York. There are people from everywhere here. So I'm glad that I'm in front of you and able to speak to all of you. This is the first time I've been in Minnesota. I was kind of afraid. Because I really didn't think anything was in Minnesota. But I'm seeing that there are people in Minnesota, thank God. Anyway, today, my talk, oh, and by the way, I want to thank Jackie Legason. I believe she got her master's here. She was the one who had suggested that I speak here, and I want to thank Dr. Fagan for inviting me. And Sylvia Olenberg, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Okay, she's been calling me for months. We had to get a contract negotiation together. Being a lawyer, I was a little specific about the contract thing, and I tried not to have a meltdown on her. But she's been very accommodating, and everyone's been very accommodating, so I want to thank you very much. Now, moving on, what I'm speaking to you about today is this. I entitled my speech, The Legal Realities of the 21st Century Rehnquist Court, equipping the African with the legal right to stand. Equipping the African with the legal right to stand. It's interesting, when I did my study for the PhD, I took a look at African American attitudes toward police aggression. And the database that I used was from the General Social Survey. Now, I'm not going to get all technical with you and talk to you about the statistic and all that. It's unnecessary. But what I found really very interesting was this. There's something that I did, and this is part of this whole Coca-Cola bottle theory, which I'm going to talk to you about today, and my sexual incarceration issues and Rehnquist. But I grouped the court. I took a look at the differences between the Burger, what I call the Burger 1, the Burger 2, and the Rehnquist courts. Let me step back a minute. The General Social Survey, the data was only taken, they started taking data in 1972, so that's when I could begin to kind of look at these statistics. So I named it the Burger 1 and the Burger 2 court because when Chief Justice Burger first got on the court, he tried to do things which were reflective of the Warren Court. The Warren Court, which gave us our rights. Okay. And then all of a sudden, Burger woke up and realized who he really was. And he and Rehnquist have been having fun with our rights ever since. But what was interesting to me was this. It was really a study on class and how African Americans in various classes react to policing. And in reacting to policing, I want to know, are we aware of what the court's been doing? Are we really aware of what the Supreme Court has been doing. And the statistic that I ended up getting indicated to me that we as Africans in this country were not really aware of the impact of the Burger II Court. How did I find this out? I kind of looked at approval ratings, and Africans in this country were still approving of the Supreme Court up through the mid-'80s, up to the point where Rehnquist was appointed. And it's very important that we understand the problem with that. It's very important that we understand what rights are being taken from us. And it's very important that we understand how to deal within the landscape of those rights that we have, those rights which are being taken, and those rights which we as people who were brought to this country deserve. Now, a little background on me. When they took my great-great-great out of my land, they brought my people to the Caribbean, okay? So I have to say what's also is represented here, and I don't know if I have any of my Jamaican or Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, but that's my background. I hope you're here. Do I have any Jamaicans here? None? Woo, I am a lone ranger. So we've got everybody here. We've got everybody here. So let's talk about standing. Let's talk about this whole idea of standing, and let's tie it all together. What is it to stand? I have here written in my notes, what is standing? What is it to be equipped to stand? The U.S. Supreme Court, years ago, came down with a ruling that says, quote unquote, a person has standing if in a litigation they have some type of interest in its outcome, or if in the outcome they will or may be affected. What does standing give a person? Standing gives a person the right to have a voice. The right to have a voice. I'm going to step back for a minute. I just want to give you an example of something which comes out of Jeremiah. It's interesting because we sit here and we're upset. We're saying we don't have a voice. I don't know how many of you know about what happened in New York the last 2 weeks. A young man, 22 years old, was shot at 41 times as he was walking into his apartment building. All he was doing was reaching for his beeper. He'd never been in trouble. He wasn't even from this country. He hadn't been here for a long time. A week later, the police did it again. Only the second man didn't die. He had been in a verbal altercation with his girlfriend, walked out of her apartment building, reached for his cell phone, and the police shot him again. And Jeremiah asks God, why is it that the wicked prosper?
All right, Doc.
Why is it that the wicked prosper? This is in Jeremiah 12. And the answer that God gives him is important for us. And I mean all of us. I don't mean just black folk, I mean all of us, and you'll understand what I mean momentarily. Essentially, God says to him, if you have raced with men on foot, and they have worn you out, how can you compete with the horses? And further, if you stumble in safe country, how will you manage in the thickets? Now, this lecture is not about the Bible. But we as Africans in this country are faced with the same question as Jeremiah. Are we going to fall apart? Should we fall apart? Have we fallen apart? No. But if we keep on looking at the thickets, if we keep on looking at Well, if I were to reinterpret the question that Jeremiah asked God for us, and if I were to frame it, you know, when you go to law school, you're told, or when you write a brief, you have to present the issue. I tell my students, what is the issue in the case? The issue is, how do we deal with a Supreme Court who is sanctioning the disenfranchisement of our people through decision-making which appears to be rendering us powerless. Let me say it again. How do we deal with a Supreme Court who is sanctioning disenfranchisement of our people through decision-making which is rendering us powerless? Well, let's just take a look at something. Let's look at the Rehnquist Court just for a minute. Let's just look at the Rehnquist Court for a minute. Let's look at how it appears the wicked are prospering. You're gonna write them a letter and tell them I called them wicked. Go right ahead, send them the tape. Send an extra one for Thomas.
That's right.
The impact of the Rehnquist Court. Number one, we see that his court has narrowed the scope of civil rights. Rulings by the court, which seem to have only been overturned by our Congress. That's why it's important that we vote, even though they're trying to block our vote. We see that the Rehnquist Court has struck down black voting districts. We see that the Rehnquist Court has limited school desegregation programs. And two more things that we see, which are what I'm going to focus in on, because I could focus in on this whole issue of desegregation. As a matter of fact, let me just step back a minute. And I'm not saying that I'm a segregationist. Don't get me wrong. But there was power. My great-grandmother had a college education, and she was a school teacher. And there was power in those black classrooms.
That's right.
Those people came out of those classrooms at the turn of the century and up through 1954, came out knowing Shakespeare, knowing their history, knowing their work, feeling empowered, knowing they could be whoever they wanted to be, wherever they wanted to be, however they wanted to be, and get there any way they could get there.
That's right.
I'm not saying that integration stunted us. I'm not saying that. But again, I'm just digressing for a minute. Can you hold on? Got my back for just a minute. All right. I grew up in my parents were in their mid-60s, and they went to college in the 50s, and their whole idea was, we're going to have all three of our kids grow up in this very, very, white world so that they can have the best schooling.
Go ahead.
So that they can know how to conjugate the verb form to be.
Go ahead.
Anyway, so in my little town, which I was born in Brooklyn, my people are from the Caribbean, but I was born in Brooklyn, 4 years old, my parents moved 25 miles outside of the city to this quaint little suburb. And it was really interesting because, and of course, I'm going to be 37 this year, so this was back in the late 60s. It was really interesting, a couple interesting things. I noticed that the few black folk that were there, if their parents weren't watching what the faculty was doing to them, these kids ended up being trapped in the lowest, slowest classes.
That's right.
And where are they now? Okay? It's very interesting. I'm not saying, because there are those of you who probably are really uncomfortable with this, I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't have time for conspiracies. Okay? But what I'm saying is, it's very, very interesting what happened. And what happened as a result of segregation. Sometimes I think it was that I'm sorry, desegregation. Sometimes I think desegregation was a more cogent form of segregation, but we're going to leave that alone. Anyway, two other things that the Rehnquist Court were doing. Number D, I have restricting federal affirmative action policies, which I'm going to focus in on today. And the last, restricting civil liberties. Restricting civil liberties for governmental power. That is what affects us all. That is what affects us all. So let's, in the introduction, they talked about this Coca-Cola bottle theory, and mind you, I believe that I should give you a taste of everything before we just kind of bring it all together. So I'm giving you a taste of every aspect of this talk before I bring it all together and let you know exactly where we are, which I hope will allow you to, in some way or another, draw your own roadmap for where we should go. Okay? Let's step back and look at the Coca-Cola bottle theory in light of the Rehnquist Court. Let's look at what's been happening in this country since we were so generously told that that slavery and indentured servitude was abolished. You know, the irony, let me slip up for a minute. The irony of the 13th Amendment lies in it itself. You know, it says, no, look it up, read it, it's deep. It says, no more slavery or indentured servitude. Then there's a comma. And it says, except, what I write here? Let me make sure I got the words right. Let me just make sure. Don't talk that in. Except as a punishment for crime. Oh. Do we have any English professors here? Any English professors? Anybody know how to conjugate the verb form to be other than me? Anybody know about commas? Anybody know about parenthetical phrases? Anybody know about that? You know, if somebody said, oh, you know, Dr. Brockett, you can speak from 10 o'clock to 11:45, which I truly am not, but you can speak from 10 o'clock in the morning to 11:45, except for the hours, except for the half an hour from 10:30 to 11. What does that, except for the half an hour from 10:30 to 11 mean? You know what it means? I better sit down. Excuse me while I pour some water.
Go ahead.
They tease me in Ohio for the way I say water and coffee. Personally, I don't hear anything, you know. Now I'm shaking. Don't make me shake. Anyway, so from 10:30 to 11, that means I'm gonna have to sit right back here in that corner. Then I can get back up at 11 o'clock and talk again. So it says, except as a punishment for crime. So are they telling us that there's no more slavery or indentured servitude, except when I arrest you behind? Then you all of a sudden become a slave
That's
again.
right.
But we'll leave that alone for now. So let's look at the Coca-Cola bottle theory, ultimately, in terms of the Rehnquist Court. What I did was, and you want to hear another story? This was really interesting. I went down to Puerto Plata, which is in the Dominican Republic. This is a few years back. And I stayed at one of these hotels where, you know, they serve you on the beach, you know. You know, I want to get my drink on. So I'm sitting there on the beach, had some of my friends hang out with me, and one of my friends who was with me, who went with me that time, happened to be a white woman, okay? So we're sitting out on the beach, we're talking, guy comes up, you know, she orders her drink, I ordered my drink, she brings back her drink, I'm sitting there. Mind you, it was January. That's a very, very, very important fact. I always tell my students, let's look at the facts. Okay, so that's a very important fact. He walked away. I summoned him. He didn't come, she summoned him. He came. Now I thought to myself, maybe I should say this in Spanish. So I asked him in Spanish. And he looked at me and he walked away. So, you know, now I'm ready to have a meltdown. So he comes back. Long story short, he says to me, we aren't allowed to serve, we're only allowed to serve the Americans. And I said, I'm an American, you know. And this is really close to hate. I thought maybe he thought, you know, another thing, when I'm in New York, people, for some reason, when I'm in New York, people can tell that I come from, Jamaicans come up to me and talk to me all the time. In the Midwest, there are no Jamaicans, so don't nobody know who I am. But, so I said, did you think I was Haitian? He's like, no, you know, I thought maybe you were Dominican, and that's another thing, you know, Dominicans look like all of us here, okay. Anyway, so he said, I didn't serve you because you don't look like an American. Now, by this time, I just wanted Coca-Cola. I didn't want anything. And I said, an American? I said, well, what does an American look like? And he said, white. And I said, well, why would you think an American? Well, black Americans don't come down here in January. What's up with that? You know what I'm saying? Why want to be down there in July when it's 110 degrees? Anyway, so what ended up happening was, he brought me my Coca-Cola bottle. So I'm looking at this Coca-Cola bottle. They had old-fashioned Coca-Cola bottles. I'm looking at it, and I began to think about just how insidiously pervasive the face of racism, the face of denial, and the face of disenfranchisement is for the African, not just here in America, but all throughout our world. So I began to think about it. I got back and I began to think about the court, and all of a sudden I came up with this idea that decision-making, since we were set free in 1866, decision-making looks like a Coca-Cola bottle. Let me explain that. Excuse me. I've had that horrible flu that everybody else has. First of all, what I did was I took a look at the courts and the chief justices, essentially from 1870 to the present. First three justices, now just hang with me for a minute. This is like going into the Old Testament. You hear 1,000 different names and you don't know who's who, and somebody begat somebody else begat. So I'm going with you on the begats. First, I looked at Waite, Fuller, and White, who were the chief justices between the 1870s and about 1921. Mind you, they were appointed by Grant, Harrison, and Cleveland. And it's interesting, because this is the bottom of the bottle. The bottom of the bottle is wide. The wider part represents liberalism. The wider part represents, you know, the generosity of the courts. So, if I look at the wider part of the bottle, we see that around this time we have the 13th Amendment, which set us free. We see we have Plessy v. Ferguson, which, believe it or not, for back then, that was liberal. That was the bomb. That was the bomb diggity. We were getting jiggy with it. You know what I'm saying? It was all that. So all of a sudden, here with Plessy v. Ferguson, wow, we were really considered people, and gee, we could sit on the other part of the train where when you got up, you had a pull in your dress, but we were allowed to sit on the train. Gee, thank you. Colored people, white people. Wow, that was a big step. Okay. So Plessy v. Ferguson, believe it or not, separate but equal was a positive decision for black folk. In 1909, we see the formation of the NAACP. In 1899, we see the formation of the Juvenile Court. Around the same time, we see the women's right to vote. Okay? Alternatively, however, we see something else. Alternatively, however, we see something else, but it really doesn't rear its ugly face as much because it's kind of a hidden ugly face. But, we know Dred Scott said that no black man would ever have the same rights as a white. So another case that came down, which separated blacks from whites, other than Plessy v. Ferguson, was this whole slaughterhouse case, which set two different types of citizenship, okay? all right? And the citizenship was between that of the federal government and the state, okay? All right, and that's very, very important, especially when we look at cases which came down where our people were sentenced to death. But we'll get there. We're still on the beginnings. 1921 to 1953, we begin to see conservatism show its face in our Coca-Cola bottle. We begin to see the bottle kind of narrow. And in narrowing, we see four. Taft, Hughes, Stone, and Vinson, appointed by Harding, Hoover, FDR, and Truman, respectively. Interestingly, Taft was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 1921. Harding appointed him. Interestingly, in that same year, Harding was sworn in the White House as a KKK member. But we'll leave that alone. All right, Congress, in these same years of the court, curbed immigration. We see that the Klan was revived during these years, and we see also something else. There was a competition between fundamental rights and ordered liberty. Now that's what concerns us here. This whole competition between fundamental rights and ordered liberty here between this 1921 and 1953. And what do I mean by that? Of course, we know about the Bill of Rights. And these Bill of Rights protect us, right? Well, in those years, states did not adopt the Bill of Rights as a protection, for people, let's say, who were being prosecuted, for instance. You had the right to your Bill of Rights, you had the right to Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Eighth Amendment protections if you were in a federal court, but not if you were in a state court. The impact, statistically, was grave when you look at, or if you look at, the impact of that on African Americans in this country. Very important. Little note, the Rehnquist Court would like to get back to that notion, but we'll leave that alone for a minute. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this competition between ordered liberty and fundamental rights. There's a case called the Roken case, 50s. There's a man who had swallowed contraband. He went to his room, the police ran in the house, kicked in his door, kicked in his bedroom door. As he ran in the room, they actually saw him swallowing the contraband pills, whatever. They took him to the hospital, they pumped his stomach, they used the contents in his stomach to prosecute him. He had no right against, what, unreasonable searches and seizure then, because this Bill of Rights did not apply to the state until truly 1968 with a case called Duncan versus Louisiana, but this isn't a procedure class. Anyway, what's interesting is you see a very conservative court taking away people's liberties, taking away people's rights during this time. And some of what they did, as Chief Justice Vinson said, it shocked the conscience. And then you began to see things change. Now let's come up to the present. From 1960 to the present, we're looking at three courts: the Warren Court, the Berger Court, and the Rehnquist Court. Now the Warren Court is the narrowest court. It represents the next little bump of liberalism, the next little bump of civil liberties in our Coca-Cola bottle. And what you see with the Warren Court was this. You saw the omnibus civil rights bill come down where, equal protection said we have the right to vote, we have the right to jobs, we have the right to public accommodations, and we have the right against any discrimination anywhere in this country. With the Warren Court, we saw cases come down like Mapp versus Ohio, which says you just can't go into someone's house and take their goods or take anything out of their house or prosecute them without a search warrant. We had Escobedo, which said you had the right to counsel. Ultimately, we had Duncan, which said that we have the right to selective incorporation, the right to the Bill of Rights. Gideon said we have the right to counsel. Barker said we have a right to speedy trial. Gee, the 60s were lovely. The 60s are old. Okay? It's over. What does he say? It's over now. You know, it's over. Now we're in the harsh realities of the Burger 1, Burger 2, and Rehnquist Court. And why do I call it Burger 1, Burger 2, and Rehnquist? Well, as I said earlier in my talk, and again, this is where we're beginning to bring it all together. Burger 1 represented a court that was emerging from this Warren Court, which was a court that gave us rights, which was a court that acknowledged that we were human, which was a court that acknowledged that we should be able to breathe and walk, which was a court that acknowledged that it was okay for us to own property, which was a court that acknowledged that it was okay for us to go to school and learn, which was a court that acknowledged that we should have the same rights as others in this country. You know, it's interesting. I'm just backing up for a minute. Sometimes when you have nothing, it's easier to work for something. Sometimes when you have nothing, it's easier to work for something. Sometimes when you have nothing, you give up whatever you got to give up because you ain't got nothing to get what you have to get. What little strides we made, what little legislation was signed, made us think that we actually had a piece of the pie.
Come, wake us up.
That's wild. I mean, think of that. There's a piece of the pie, there's a crumb, and there's a crumb of the crumb. And then there's the whole idea of thinking how to make the pie, and you ain't got nothing in front of you. I think we still are thinking about how to make the pie, and we don't have a thing in front of us. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? We do not have a thing in front of us. But yet, we have a few folk who are able to get through school, I can buy a car now. I can go to the supermarket. But the reality is that now let me step back a minute again, because remember I told you to give all these little things. How in the world, let's think about this. Let's think about this 13th Amendment in light of all this stuff that we were given in the 60s. How in the world can an oppressor tell the oppressed that they're equal without still retaining the ability to be free? How can that happen? I mean, my mother can say to me, Ramona, you can have whatever you want in my house, and you can have this, and you can have that, and da-da-da. Thank you, Mommy. Me and Mommy, but Mommy had to say to me, Ramona, you can have that. Which means that Mommy, mother, father retains that power over me. I can't just go grab it. And this is something that I think we forgot along the way. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told we could go to school together. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told we can drive up and down the same street together. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told we could live next door to each other. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told we could sit in classrooms together. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told that we could work together. I think we forgot it along the way when we were told we could go to church together. I think we forgot it somewhere along the way. Now, I'm not saying that those things are bad. I'm not saying that. Dr. Brockett said it's bad to drive next to somebody who oppressed her. I am not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. Okay. But what I'm saying is, we have to stay focused. What I'm saying is, it's so easy. It's so easy. When Jeremiah said to God, how is it that the wicked prosper? God was saying to him, in my opinion, I'm the one who made the wicked. Why are you even tripping? Okay? I know that I know. I am that I am. You are going to be fine. Stop looking at what stops you and look at where you need to be. Let's move on, because I had to just throw that one at you. Burger 1, Burger 2, and Rehnquist. All of a sudden, with the Burger II, which I believe started around 1978, okay? We see a change in a philosophy. We see with the case of Oliver, there's no expectation of privacy. We aren't even going to go into the details of that. We see with case of another case in Arizona, 1987, that actually a policeman can go into your house, both with the case of with the case of Maryland versus Bowie, which rebutted the presumption of Arizona. Let me tell you what's going on. We had policemen walking into people's houses and going through their things in something that we call protective sweep. Actually, in the case of Arizona in 1987, Scalia, who had just gotten on the court, and I think he just wanted to deceive us, actually said, this is a bad thing to do. Then they came back in 1990 and said, no, we can go into someone's house and do a protective sweep. We can go through your underwear and try to find that joint and throw you in jail for 50 years, okay? We can do whatever we want to do. Wilson versus Arkansas, very interesting case. They very rarely let Thomas write anything. Generally, he's just getting the tea. But in Wilson versus Arkansas, 1995 case, Thomas wrote the majority opinion. And in this majority opinion, he said it was okay for police to kick down the door of someone's house, essentially. They did not have to knock. What did he justify his opinion on? A case coming out of the King's Court of 1603. Thomas did his research. A case coming out of the King's Court of 1603, where they said the king's purpose was to protect his kingdom and his subjects. So Thomas was like, it's okay for a cop to just kick somebody's door in. Because after all, we have to protect the kingdom and the subjects. Woo! So, somebody's house is burning. We're gonna leave that alone. Master's house is burning, we gotta protect it. So this is the kind of mentality that Justice Thomas brought to the court in 1995, using a case in 1603 to justify kicking doors open. Now, mind you, again, I'm talking about the Burger II, the Rehnquist courts, and let me make something clear to you. While we sit here and we say, yeah, look at what they're doing to us, look at what they're doing to us, and we sit here as Africans in this country saying, look at what they're doing to us, guess what? They're not just doing it to us, they're doing it to every single person in this country, black or white, because our civil liberties are being denied. So if you're a white woman who's getting a divorce, it's a very interesting case came down a few years back, which said that any garbage which is put on outside of a home, waiting the garbage man, that is no longer privacy, somebody can go through it. So let's say you're a white woman getting a divorce, and your husband wants to take the kids so that you don't have them, and all of a sudden he's going through your thrown away American Express bills, noticing that you were out with some man at some hotel. Guess what? He can use that as evidence against you to get those kids taken away from you. So when we talk about this issue of civil liberties, we aren't just talking about black folk being denied the right to have jobs, to have education, to have a house. We're talking about anyone in this country who does not fit within the paradigms of the police state, which Rehnquist and his court is designed for us. I'm sorry. Is that too hard? Sorry, I'm just Anyway, but it's the truth. So while we sit here as black folk in this month, oh, we're going to be black this month.
Yeah.
As we sit here as black folk in this month, we cannot forget that there are 12 months out of the year where not only we, but everyone is being denied certain rights. We have to remember this. We have to remember this. It's very important. It's very important. Let me touch upon, because I said to you that there were two things I was going to focus on, one of which I've already focused on, the restricting of civil liberties for government power, which is what I just talked about. The next one is restricting federal affirmative action policy. Now this one is good. This is good. See, in 1988, I guess he was on the court for a year by then, or Chief Justice. Rehnquist was appointed initially to the court by Nixon. And then, of course, and so was Berger, by the way. And then, of course, he was made Supreme Court Justice by that man that they want to put up on that mountain. What was his name? Oh, Alzheimer's guy. What was his name? Reagan? I know what his name is. I'm just being facetious. I act like I have Alzheimer's. And, I mean, truly, if they do carve his face on Mount, what is it called? What's the mountain? Yeah, Rushmore. We need to rush more and take that thing off. Anyway. All right, well, what's so interesting about this whole, it's really interesting when Rehnquist was made Chief Justice, he did some really clever things. And something I just want to note for you all, if you read these court cases, pay close attention to the dissenting opinions, especially in the 60s and early 70s. Pay close attention to those dissenting opinions, because every single one of those dissenting opinions are going to be the majority opinions, and are the majority opinions now. Okay, especially in the beginning of the 21st century. But let's talk about this whole idea of affirmative action. What they did in '88 was Rehnquist decided that, in order to go to the Supreme Court, you have to write something called a writ of certiorari, to go to any Supreme Court. Then they decide whether they want, to listen to you. Well, Rehnquist made those requirements kind of really strict, in that the Supreme Court now can listen to whatever it wants to listen to, whenever it wants to, and however many times it wants to. What do I mean by that? Well, in 1993 and then in 1995, there's a case, I believe the title is Shaw versus Reno. The whole question was that of equal protection. Now, mind you, this comes before Proposition 209. It's interesting. So look at this picture. In '88, they decide they're going to see what they want to see when they want to see it. And then in 1993 and 1995, 2 different years, the court looks at the same case twice. Now, a little lesson here. Equal protection, comes under the 14th Amendment. We're all equally protected under the law. There are tests of equal protection. There's 3: strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, rational basis. Okay. When we talk about intermediate scrutiny, we're talking about religion. We're talking about sex. We're talking about we're not talking about race. When we talk about rational basis, we're talking about economics. But when we talk about strict scrutiny, we're talking about race. Strict scrutiny is the toughest test under equal protection. If they find under equal protection that you have not been treated right, and if the test is strict scrutiny, of course, the penalty is harsh, okay? Or you automatically get reinstated or whatever you get. Now, the history of it has been this, that there are people in this country who are what we call a discrete and insular minority. There are people in this country who have a history of wrongs, okay, which were wrought against them. And strict scrutiny was there to protect these people, chiefly Africans, Indians, obvious minorities. Well, there's something really interesting going on in this country. You got a lot of Latinos coming in, you got a lot of Asians coming in. And by the year 2004, 2010, white folk are going to be the minority. Interesting, we say, everybody goes, yeah, white folk will be the minority. They're going to do it like, yeah. What the court did was this. And mind you, the means of this world are getting more and more scary and scarce because of what Reagan did to us in the 80s by taking away our financial aid abilities. I think that was a part of it. So for you guys who are in school, get to law school. Get to grad school. But because me scares people. Because you're not supposed to have this much knowledge. You're not supposed to know what the court's doing. You should go buy college greens and be happy. You're supposed to be happy that you got an education, is that what I'm saying? Education. You're not supposed to know all this stuff. Anyway, so now, what's interesting is, yes, whites, European people are going to be the minority, are going to be part of the minority. So what they decided to do was include them under strict scrutiny. And this is this whole debate that people have been hearing. Have been hearing over the last few years. Why should white men be included under this? This is unfair. They aren't, But that was all to remedy the population growth issue. Do you understand? Now this scares people that, you talk like this, I don't know. Not too many things out here, Anyway, so, I'm just joking. Anyway, so I'm saying I won't go there. Anyway, so here we have white folk who in 1993 and in 1995, the Rehnquist Court made sure that just blacks and Indians and people of national origin, etc., weren't the only ones included, because it wouldn't be fair that you also had to have people of European descent who could have been discriminated against. Well, what does that do to this whole idea of strict scrutiny? It wipes it out. If you have every single nationality under this equal protection scheme, what do you have it for? So they decided this back in 1993, 1995, that also we get Proposition 209 a year ago. That's going to go to the step, we're going to take something to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court already made this ruling that was okay, so what's the big deal? We really need to pay attention to what's going on. I think we really are missing the mark. But let me throw a couple other things out at you. Now this is something that's about to happen. Something that's about to happen. But before I do that, let me explain something. This goes along with this whole idea of civil liberties being taken away, going back to that idea. It's interesting because earlier I mentioned Matt versus Ohio and this whole idea of having a warrant in order to search someone's house. There are exceptions to warrant rules. One thing that the Rehnquist Court has been doing is using this word exigency. Exigency. All right, it's one of the exceptions to having a warrant. Exigency means if there's an emergency situation, police can do whatever they have to do to remedy that situation, because after all, they're protecting the public. Well, wait a minute, where did we hear that? Didn't Thomas say that about the court of 1603? After all, the king got to protect his subjects. So after all, we're protecting the public. So you see one case after the next, especially within this last decade, okay, where the Rehnquist Court is constantly justifying actions by police and saying, well, it was an exigent circumstance and it's important that the government protect its people. Well, let's look at exigency. What does this mean? If there's an emergency situation, well, I guess in New York, the boy going to grab his beeper was an emergency situation, and that's why he could end up having 41 bullets shot at him and 19 hitting his body. Because after all, that's an emergency situation. Let's look at the issue of Miranda. There's a case that I want you guys to pay very close attention to that's coming out of the 4th Circuit at the state of Virginia. Case called Dickerson versus Virginia, which the 4th Circuit concluded and ruled that there's no need for Miranda warnings. And that's being appealed to the United States Supreme Court. What happened there? You had a man who was taken in by the FBI. They took him to their field office and they said that he voluntarily confessed. Lord Jesus, help me. They said that he voluntarily confessed, and his attorneys were like, excuse me, since when do we have a voluntary confession? Okay, so they went all the way up, and exhausted the remedies of the courts in Virginia, and now they're about to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and present this before the court. But I'm going to tell you right now, the court is going to uphold this decision that it's okay not to read a person their Miranda rights if they voluntarily confess. Now, we know the history of voluntary confessions and police.
Yes.
Not just with our people, with everybody, but especially with our people. So look for Dickerson versus Virginia. Look for another case. This case is called Piscataway Board of Education versus Taxman, coming out of New Jersey. This case is going to the Supreme Court because it's saying, should employees be given special treatment if they're minorities in order to preserve minority status if layoffs have to be given? Let me say it another way. If your company is laying folk off, should they just keep the black folk and lay off all the good white, hard-working white people? That's really what they're saying. All these hard-working white people. We can't lay them off. We got to lay off the black folk. Oh, wait, we can't lay off the black folk because we got to keep so many in. Woo! What are we going to do? Let's run to Uncle Rehnquist and ask him to make a decision about this. Uncle Rehnquist? Should we keep the black folk? Or can we get rid of them? So anyway, so that's the next question that's before the court. Very interesting. What are they going to say? Another question, case of Hudson versus the United States. It's also going up to the Supreme Court. This is a question of double jeopardy. Very interesting question. Rehnquist wrote an opinion somewhere in the mid-'80s stating that if someone is convicted in criminal court of a certain crime, that they then can have their possessions taken away from them in civil court and for the same crime. The whole question is that double jeopardy? So that's another one that's going to be before our boys, Uncle Thomas Scalia, and Another question before the court is this, and this goes to this whole issue of police scrutiny. I'm sure this tape is going to be sent to Washington, D.C. Anyway, another one, police case is called Sacramento County, California versus Lewis. This whole question of whether or not, now this is so very interesting, especially for our inner cities, whether or not police are violating the rights of people, the rights to people's life and safety when they are in pursuit of a criminal. In other words, if the police is trying to shoot a criminal down and your 4-year-old daughter gets shot dead, if the police are trying to chase somebody down and your grandfather gets hit by their car, do those people have rights to life and safety? That's the question before the court. Do they have the right to life? They go into Uncle Thomas and Uncle Scalia and Auntie O'Connor and Uncle Rehnquist and Uncle Kennedy, and they're going to say, do I have a right to life when you shoot my daughter, when you're trying to get my son and put him in jail? Next thing, look at this case. National Credit Union Administration versus First National Bank and Trust. This has to do with money. And the major banks are going to the Supreme Court. And they're saying to the Supreme Court, we want you to stunt the growth of tax-exempt federal credit unions. Now you know who goes to federal credit unions. Okay? They want the growth of the credit unions to be stumped. Why? Because they're saying we need to make money. Now, of course, you know the agenda of some people in this country, so more than likely, we know the outcomes. We know the outcomes of all these cases. So where are we? Where are we? What do we do? I was working on a piece and I had to look at an issue concerning human capital, which just talks about, your working position, why you would or wouldn't stay in your position, the way you view your value in your position, etc. And in looking at human capital, I also had to look at a few other things. Now, I have a brother who's 25 years old, and I have a sister who's 42. And my sister and I, when we went to school, there are all kinds of things available, there are all kinds of incentives to go to school, etc. Black folk were going to school. Minorities were going to school, okay? By the time my brother got out of school, high school in the early 90s, he went to James Madison University, which is in Virginia. And when he went in, the counselors told my parents, black men aren't going to college anymore. Because they wanted to give him this big scholarship. Because of his SAT score, etc. Black men aren't going to school. We're trying to give them money so that they would come to school. There was a huge drop. Why? Because in 82, Reagan made sure there was a huge drop. So I'm admonishing those of you who are here and students to stay in school. And for those of us who in some way or another can help, okay, by getting more of our people into school, we need to do that. Because you know what? We really are in, and we really should be in the mentality of pre-Brown v. Board of Education. We really should be of the mentality of separate, but equal.
That's right.
Let me explain what I mean to you by that, because I'm sure some of you are really separate but equal. What's she talking about? What she mean? What I mean is this, and it goes back to what I said in the beginning of this conversation that I'm having with you today. When we did our own thing,
That's right.
when we had our own schools, when we had our own rib joints on the corner, when we had our own doctors that we went to, when we had our own dentists that we went to, when we had our own nurses and midwives delivering our children, when we had our own hospitals, when we realized that it was our struggle, when we realized that there was no bleeding heart hand to take us across the streets, we did better. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who want to help. There's nothing wrong with that. I had somebody say to me, this guy's a judge and very quote unquote bleeding heart like. Nothing's wrong with bleeding hearts, don't get me wrong. He was asking me about my great grandmother, and I said, yeah, well, she went to this school, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, well, that's really good. It always freaks me out. That's really good. And he said, but I'm sure that those schools weren't equal to the other schools. I mean, she may have gotten a college degree, at the turn of the century. I'm sure that it wasn't equal to other people. When we realized that people who wanted to hold our hands didn't consider us equal. See what I'm saying? We got further, okay? And it's not like, I'm not saying that, because, if the struggle, when we look at the struggle, we understand who worked with us during that struggle. We can't forget that in this country. We can't forget that there were white folk working with us. We can't forget that there were Jewish folk working with us, okay? We can't forget that. But I think that what we've forgotten was the pain of the struggle. I think that why our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers are turning over in their graves today is because in the 70s, when we were able to watch George Jefferson and Dynamite, okay, and Fred Sanford, all of a sudden we thought, hey, okay, we arrived. No, we did not arrive. We did not arrive. We were not considered equal. We are not considered equal. We are not considered part. And if we continue to forget that, we're going to be in the same place that we are, that we've been, and that we're going to continue to end up in. So I just admonish you to remember where we are and to operate from that perspective. Not thinking that we're less, because we're not. I come from Jamaican stock. I was told I'm better than every single person. You're better than everybody in the room now. Don't never think that nobody else in this room is any better or any worse than you. You're better than everybody. So, that's what I was raised to think. And that's what we should think as a people in this country. Somebody asked me to work on a racial reconciliation project. Okay, so we're working on a racial reconciliation book. And I had a black woman, come to me and tell me, she's 32 years old, that she has a hard time looking white people in their face. She feels, I'm like, what? What? So I mean, but it's really interesting, because while we say, wow, she can't look white, let's take really what she's saying. In a way, she's saying, they're better than me. I'm less than them. Let's not think like that. Let's not think like that. And I think that we're thinking like that in many ways. I think that it's sad. I look at the students on my campus sometime, and of course I'm the only one like me in my department. When I first got there, I teach criminal criminal procedure and I teach criminal law, there were no black students in my classes, none. And I observed some other classes, and they would not speak. My people weren't speaking in class. They weren't speaking in class. What's up with that? Like in the 70s and 80s, you know, we were speaking. We were straight up there. It was no joke. You want to say something? Let's go. Let's do this, you know. But we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that now. I'm not seeing that. I wasn't seeing. So we have to encourage each other. We have to encourage our students, the people who, I don't know how many administrators we have here, I don't know how many college professors we have in this room, but you must encourage our students to speak and to stand. There's nothing wrong. I started off saying that this talk today was about our legal right to stand. Guess what? We have a right to stand. Anytime you have standing in a litigation, it's because you have an interest in that litigation. We as a people have an interest in this litigation, and that litigation is having the same rights as everyone else in this country. Thank you. And speak up. I think some people are leaving. We do have questions, yes. I did a piece on class. I took a look at police attitudes toward African and European American people's attitudes toward police aggression. I looked at it based upon class. And my thought was that regardless of where you are in class rank, if you're African in this country, you would not approve of police aggression. And that was my finding, and I also found that whites, from lower class, working class, middle class, upper class, approval goes up as you go up the class rank. So I did factor analysis, and then I compared the factor means over the. And what ended up happening was the African American upper class approves of police aggression at a lower rate than the European lower class. Now, what's interesting about that, I'm headed towards your question. What's interesting about that is, if we look at Clocker's work and other people, Miller and Bryant, et cetera, we know that police in this country were formed, really, if you look at it, and then we look at it from a Marxian perspective, were formed to protect the upper class from the working class, to police the working class. Also, I had to look at the group within. I found that as far as approval rates are concerned, in general, they're low for Africans in this country, regardless of class, but the working class is a little bit more approving than the lower class, middle class, or upper class, which was very interesting. Now, where am I headed with that? Two things. One, you find, generally, if you want to talk about class issues, the working class, generally black or white, makes up police, okay? And also, the mentality of the working class is to what? Conform. Okay, and the working class doesn't realize that they're merely the puppets of the upper class, or those who own. All right, within class groups, okay, again, we've got something going on with African Americans in this country where, and I don't think that we should totally buy it, but I think what was trying to be promoted in the 80s, especially with the administration, with the courts, that there's this really big difference between blacks who work real hard and become rich, and black folk who don't work hard and, as these people like to say, live off the fat of the earth. But there isn't a difference. If you take a close look at the statistics, and if you take a close look at the work, especially when we talk about human capital, et cetera, and even some of my work, we talk about policing, what you find is that the black middle and upper class are becoming more and more angry. Anytime Butch Graves, okay, who his dad you know, the Earl Graves, Black Enterprise. Anytime Butch can get on a railroad heading to Chappaqua, where his parents live, and somebody can report on that train that there's a well-dressed black man with a gun in his pocket, and he can get beaten up, there's a problem, okay? Anytime, let's take, you know, they have all these articles on, this is the way in the Midwest. So I don't know how many of you get out to Martha's Vineyard. Did anybody in here go to Martha's Vineyard? Probably not. All right. I grew up with a family, my parents' summer house was there. Okay? And it's interesting, the reason why I looked at issues of class with black folk is because of my experience and friends. Now Martha's Vineyard, I'm sure you guys have heard of it. There are a lot of people there who are well known, et cetera, et cetera. Black folk on Martha's Vineyard just hang with black folk. You don't hang with white folk when you're on Martha's Vineyard. It's no offense to white folk, don't get me wrong. But growing up, somebody wrote an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he said, I never even knew white people went to Martha's Vineyard. Okay? Because when you go to the island, you hang black, period. But it was interesting because I was in the theater and all that stuff, and so I acted with the Vineyard Haven Players. And I would hang out with some of these kids sometimes at their parties. And their dads were well-known people. And they would have all kinds of drugs and sometimes guns and sometimes all kinds of crazy things going on. And no cop would ever do anything. The minute we had a party, there were like 6 cop cars. One of my friends, his dad in '82, there was a new, the baby Mercedes came out, right? And his father wasn't one. He was driving up this one street called Circuit Avenue, and a cop literally went up to the side of his car, and he had New York plates. The side of his car, pulled out his gun, and he said, "We don't want your kind here." So I'm telling you that another friend of mine got beat up by the cops on Martha's Vineyard, and these are all hard-working black folk who have made it, right? But the system is the same whether you're on the top or on the bottom, because in America, when the oppressed were told by the oppressor they were equal, they gave the oppressor the right to tell him that. So any black person who's a multimillionaire, who thinks that they, what's this guy in California, what is his name? Who thinks that there are no problems, that puts a wrinkle on my psyche, okay? There are problems, and we can't ignore that. What I think is going to happen is we're going to see more and more atrocities with the black middle and upper class. And I think you're going to begin to hear more and more a voice coming out of that class. And I think we're going to kind of go back to the kind of W. Du Bois sort of thing, where we see that there will be leadership coming from those who have power. And that's why, in the 80s, they took the power away from us when it came to education and when it came to funding. Because God forbid you get too much knowledge and like being black. All right? There's a problem. Any other questions? Any other questions? Oh, yes.
I was wondering what was your
I was on a radio broadcast once and I got in a lot of trouble. You know, the Enlightenment period in Europe, there was a big room, and they swept its dirt across a river called the Atlantic Ocean. And these people were given an affirmative action ride, you know, because you had, and Plessy v. Ferguson, Justice Harlan talks about this in his dissent. Take a close look at his dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson. You had people who were, you know, they talk about the people who were oppressed because they were religious objectors, you know, and how they were in the gallows. And they kind of skip over where the daughters of the American Revolution really came from. But, you know, we had women also, they had women also in the gallows of Europe who were women of the night, I guess, and I guess they've gotten caught. And they had all kinds of people who had committed crimes, etc. And they were in the gallows in Europe, and many of those people were thrown on those ships and sent across that river. And I call the Nina, or is it called the Nina, the Pinta, and the San Maria? I call those an affirmative action ride. So affirmative action started when the Enlightenment period took its broom and swept its dirt across the river. Okay? So I think that this country was built on affirmative action. Now, what do I think of affirmative action? I think that unfortunately in the 70s, again, that goes back to what I said before, we relied way too heavily on handouts from people who were like, oh, come on, you know, you can work by us. Let's use the sweat of your brow. And then let's not give you the same promotion as we give everyone else. Okay? I think that, and this is my point, I think that we really need to go back to a pre-Brown v. Board mentality. Okay? And I think that we really need to start relying on ourselves because we aren't going to get anywhere relying on anyone else. So that includes our own businesses. If we have to, that includes our own elementary schools. It's very interesting. There's going to be this whole thing with private and public schooling coming up, you know, before the Supreme Court. All right? So we need to get in on that, and we need to form our own schools. Do you understand? We need to form our own elementary schools and our own high schools, okay? And that's what we need to do. We need to take our resources, our PhDs, our doctors, whoever we have, and we need to form our own schools. We need to do it for ourselves. Question?
Yeah, I definitely understand what you were saying about the middle class, the black middle class dealing with state repression and state violence. But how can we incorporate issues of class basically dealing with basically what I'm saying is, you know, post-1960s, post-civil rights, we see a growth in the middle class, black middle class of about 7 times. But there's still an exponential growth in poverty of the poor. So how do we, in some ways, I guess, pull somewhat of a Marxist analogy into dealing with anti-black racism or white supremacy? You know, how can we pull those two together?
So are you saying, how do you pull those folk who've made it together with those folk who have? I'm
basically saying, how can we pull issues of class and race together? Sort of dealing with more of a type analogy.
I think that what we need, I hear what you're saying now. I think that what we need to do, really, is I think we need to understand that we're all in the same boat. Do you know what I'm saying? We need to understand that just because, you know, you have a house on Martha's Vineyard, right? It doesn't mean that you can't be living, and I can only use Brooklyn as an example, but you can't be living, you know, in East New York or something like that. I think that we need to understand that we are the same people regardless of what we have. I think that we need to start saying that. I think that we need to start getting that across, okay? Because I think that what has happened is, and this is what's kind of scary in a way. I think that we've begun to accept the lies from the oppressor. I think we've begun to accept this notion that there's differences between us. You know, I had someone, a boss say to me, "Oh, it's easy for me to talk to you. You're not like them. You don't sound like them. You come from, so you're not like them." No, I am like them. I am them. Just the fact that you said that I'm not like them lets me know that you think I am them and we are the same. Okay? So what we need to do in that is begin to work as one. Now see, what's really scary, it's funny, I have a student who got her master's from the program. Now she's working on a PhD down in North Carolina. And she emailed me and she said, you know, I don't know what to do. There are no black professors in this department. I feel alone. I feel oppressed. She said, and I wanted the black students and I to get together, but they were afraid because they said, she said, one of them said, if they see us all talking together, they might get nervous. This is 1999. I just got this email 3 days ago. And I think that watching our leaders get killed in the 60s, you know, I said this to my class the other day, I said, you know, when I was a little girl, I was afraid of fire hydrants. You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be 37 in September. And in the 60s, when the TV went on, there were fire hoses blowing men that looked like my father down the street. So when he was walking by a fire hydrant, I'd freak out. What's my point? We were taught how to be afraid. You know, a really interesting show came on A&E where they were talking about the servants of people in the South during slavery. And how the servant would have to, like if the food was being cooked in one building and they brought the food over to the kitchen, the servant would have to whistle as he was bringing the food so that the master would know he wasn't eating his food. We need to stop whistling. You understand? We need not to be afraid to be together. And I think that watching our leaders be killed, you know, taught us to fear. And I think, unfortunately, those leaders that we do have in this country who are trying to have, those leaders who we do have in this country who are really saying, you know, we need not to be afraid to follow people who are speaking the truth. That's it. That's the bottom line.
What type of leadership do you expect African American politics to be? The House, the Senate, do you expect them to really talk about things that we should right at the top there, or they should just stand aside and deal neutrally with their counterparts because they want to be politics?
Okay, I think you just answered your question. Did you just answer, is that what you think? I mean, what do you think?
That's what I'm saying. Do you expect a different direction? How are they going to do it?
I can't speak for anyone who's either a senator or whatever. I can't speak for them. I just know this, that when we relied on ourselves in a very grassroots type of way, we made it. Again, in my speech, I said we had nothing. We worked harder to get something. It appeared that the minute we got something, all of a sudden we wanted to keep this little morsel, and the morsel was nothing. I think sometimes it's hard for people who maybe have not experienced generation after generation after generation of oppression to say, why not just sit back and let them and just go along with it? But the more we sit back and let them and just go along with it, the more we're not going to have anything. I'm telling you, the Rehnquist Court is making sure that we're not going to have a thing. So if we're not going to have a thing, let's have fun. Yes. Yes. Let me tell you what's going to happen. It's not going to be a matter of getting that mentality out. The government is making sure that we're not going to have it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not that. It's almost like, in a way, what's happening. I think this is gonna sound really, a lot of you aren't gonna like this. In a way, what's happening is going to throw us back to where we truly need to be. It's going to put us in a position where we're going to realize we never had a thing. Okay? And that's what you guys do. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Yes.
I was just saying that I feel, you know, I really can't talk back for the 60s and 70s level when y'all already talking about what's going on now in 99. Only way I feel we can prosper now is to stop knocking each other. You know what I'm saying? We all trying to do something, but we constantly knock each other when another black person is doing something positive or we're doing something right. We stop knocking each other, we can do what we want to. We can do
Right.
what we want to.
You're right. And I'm going to tell you, and that's an excellent statement. I'll tell you something. What is really sad, I worked with a program, well, I was working on my PhD back in the, I guess, the early 90s. I worked on a program in New Jersey with the Youth Authority in New Jersey. Long story short, they took in juveniles, and they tried to take them to class, et cetera, on Rutgers campus. What was sad was that one of the components of the program was they wanted them to watch Eyes on the Prize. And these were 16-year-old kids. at the time, I'm sorry, 17, 18 maybe, they said, why do we have to watch this? This is something we can't relate to. You know what? That's our fault. Anybody who's my age and older, that is our fault. There is no reason why these kids should not know what happened in the 60s. There is no reason why these kids should not be aware of why they're able to sit next to somebody else in the classroom. There is no reason why they should not know. And the fact that they don't know is our fault. It's our fault. And you know what? That's a lesson that we got rid of when we left Africa. Because you know what? We're supposed to pass things from generation to generation to generation. So it's not his fault that he doesn't know. It's our fault that we were lax and didn't tell him. Yes.
Well, I myself, I'm scared to go back to word of politics, but I know you stretch. But you spoke about voting rights, and I'm kind of skeptical of this, but my understanding is that President Reagan, somebody signed an extension of voting rights for 25 years.
Right.
And it's supposed to be re-implemented.
Well, wait, hold on. Before you even talk about him signing the voting rights, which was extended for another 25 years, in order for him to have had to sign that, you know, they show that picture of Johnson and Martin Luther King, you know, and Johnson kind of turns to Martin, but he's really not. He's just turning around saying, give me a pen. Anyway, at that point, that's the point where we messed up. That's the point where we were too complacent, all right? I think that we were very complacent in the 60s when certain legislation went through, which would put our value at question every 25 years. You understand what I'm saying? So we can't sit there and point our finger at Reagan. Reagan's just doing what Johnson started, okay? And Johnson's just doing what those courts of 1603 that Thomas wants to quote. Was doing. And even, you know, and then there are some issues too. We have to look at ourselves and how we got here in the first place. So, but that's not our speech today. But you're right. There are some voting issues, yeah.
So, I mean, is that be legally bound? Is there some, I mean, can that actually happen?
Again, I think that we need to take a certain mentality. Okay, and this mentality has to be pre-1954. Now there's something else. There's another thought that I've been grappling with over the last several months, and I don't know how I'm going to language this in a paper. But there's something, and this is something I want to part with. We are, in this country and in the Caribbean, we are the sons and daughters of a people who are oppressed. Okay? We are the sons and daughters of a people who were sent away. We are the sons and daughters of a people who were rejected. Okay? The sons and daughters of a people who were rejected. And so, you know, they talk about depression. You know, in depression you feel hopeless, and that's why you have to be on all these medications, etc. And you feel hopeless because you feel like you've been abandoned. And I think that part of the reason why we have the issues that we have today is because we haven't accepted and gotten rid of those feelings of abandonment. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I don't know how to language this, because if I language this, I'm going to step on people's toes. And people are going to be through with me. Okay? You know? Because people sit and they talk about how, you know, there was an economic struggle and how certain people gained all these monies through the slave trade. You know, and when we think about it, we only think about white folk, but our folk who left us and abandoned us did the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. All right? But this just happens to be our plight. So I think that as people who were abandoned, we need to pick that up, get rid of it, and move on. And we need to, again, work together to get rid and to get back to that drummer in our own souls. Okay? So that we can move on. Yes. But that's okay. They should consider themselves Kenyan. Hold on, because I don't want to go down that road. But everyone should consider themselves Kenyan. That's up to them. But what we need to do, and that's fine, we're all the same people. But what we need to do in this country is realize that we need to get together. And just as they consider themselves Kenyan, we consider ourselves who we are, and we need to work and move forward. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Dr. Brockett, for an inspirational and informative presentation. Before you leave, we are now getting ready to go visit Kenya and have an excellent lunch, discussion.
Where he designed and developed the Community Mental Health Patient Assistance Program, helping patients come out of the institution and back into the community. In 1967, he was one of the founding members of the Black American Psychologists Association. In that same year, he also became founder, president, and CEO of Ebony Management Associates, Inc., which provided consulting, management, training, and programs designed services to the private and the public sector. He also designed and conducted human relations and sensitivity training for police departments, for private corporations, for social service agencies, and he was featured in CBS's hourly national documentary, The Battle of East St. Louis, a sensitivity program which he designed. Then through the years, Dr. Millis has also been the president and CEO of Video Box Inc., the Male Shippers Inc., and Glamour Girl Inc. He holds and held memberships in the American Psychologists Association, Black American Psychologists Association, American Management Association, Woodlawn Mental Health Association, Church Federation of Chicago, and the International Rotary Club. He has been a board member of the Regional Boys Club of America, secretary and vice president of John Howard Associates, president of the Black Business Awareness Network Association, and district representative of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. He is the author of many publications, including articles and books of interpersonal and personal relationships, human relations training, and business strategies and development. His latest bestseller, published by Hastings House, entitled Do Black Women